Back to some one or two previous things that sort of came out, I believe, under the auspices, if not the marquee, of Kairos. But one of them was this, if you recall, was that the future of facts is too, underlined, open-ended, imprecise, uncertain, short, dramatic, and abrupt for facts to have a visible future. God knows why, but at the time that was read, I know at least several people that was here in person made some sort of semi-human sound, like some kind of recognition, a snort or a grunt. Or maybe someone was having a hacking fit. But, believe it or not, running the great risk, I will attempt to make, along with your help, some sense of this. We're still speaking, if you recall, about the matter of, for our own nefarious purposes, dividing up temporarily, arbitrarily, and not so as to probably directly offend any of the prevailing local felonies, misdemeanors and ordinances, I don't know. But we're dividing life, recall, into acts and facts. Whew. Now back to what I said, maybe we re-note that the future of facts is too open-ended, imprecise, uncertain, short, abrupt, and dramatic for facts to have a visible future in one man's lifetime, which is always the only thing that we're interested in here, recall. Because if it's over one man's lifetime, if it becomes some sort of historical reality or historical truth, or any statement, anything you could see that is operationally, functionally correct to you, it's only good, the currency is only valid for your lifetime if you're looking at something that is already being held as being a wider truth, something that's been true before you, like everybody in the city believes, that anything that's really neat and good and true certainly is not temporary. They wouldn't even tolerate the possibility of that. But it's also on the basis that if it was true, somebody's noted it long before you, or it wouldn't be a worthwhile truth. I mean, it's nothing new. Nobody's going to discover brand new truths. The real good truths have already been discovered way back there. So it's only in one man's lifetime. You do not have to be some specious attempt at an egocentric, an unbelievably egocentric attitude to say, well, I'm only interested in my lifetime. You don't have to say that. Because you are. You can say otherwise factually, but actually you're not. You can't be. So, I just went ahead and plugged it back in the sentence, recall, that the future facts is too open-ended, imprecise, uncertain, short, abrupt, dramatic, for facts to actually have an observable, perceivable, visible future in one man's lifetime. But now consider this. After having said that, then you must note that the world of acts, primary acts, the big good old three simple S's of sex and shelter and sustenance. It is not true with acts because they have a very predictable future. It is that they will remain and produce the necessary results that life needs. Do you follow? I mean, there's nothing else to be said. Acts, just take the three acts. Assume that that is a bare minimal, if not a bare maximal. Of those three, they have a predictable future. No sane person could question or try and set up a round-robin discussion, no matter what kind of birdseed you had, to try and discuss, does sex have a future in the life of man? Maybe you can, but don't invite us. Or maybe you want to go out and make a name for yourself. Speech for this evening. Food. whither goest thou in the future of man? You know, and you talk on the possibility of, perhaps we should eat or will eat in the future. At the act-based level, the future is not open-ended, it is not imprecise, it is not uncertain. There is no uncertainty about the future of the act-based world. But the only thing that you could begin to say about the future of facts would be this: that facts will produce more facts. Now that's the closest, that is the only real thing that you can factually, that is verbally, remember, words, facts with feet. Or for those of you up to date, facts sent by Overnight Express, or facts faxed. The only thing that could be said would be that facts will produce more facts, but acts are not going to produce more acts. The way things stand now, the way things have stood for as long as your DNA has been writing history on this planet, those three acts have proved quite sufficient. They brought forth a sterling, up-to-date example of the best that life has to offer, you. So, how can you question it? So up until now, life needs no other acts. So the future of acts are absolutely certain. Some of you also, if you recall, laughed a few nights ago that there was some, Kyrute mentioned some neural, on some neural network, the prognosticator says, staying before the neural weather map, that present conditions will be followed by other conditions. Might I point out that that will almost fit in right here. You can say that about conditions, but you can also say that about facts, because in one sense, acts have no conditions, which is just another way of saying there is no uncertainty in the sane, everyday, absolutely necessary sense that sex, that is, that the human race reproduce itself, and that once it's reproduced, that each individual member that's going to play a sane, middle class, middle of the bell curve role must eat, must look after their health, must try not to get killed at too early an age. So the future is predictable, not of the individual, that's not the point, but of the acts that support life, that work through man on this level. The acts are predictable, they're not uncertain. There's no doubt that, given normal conditions, that if you screw enough of the opposite sex, that somebody, one of the partners, will get pregnant and produce a child. But in the general scheme of things, there is no uncertainty. Or that if you're hungry and you eat food, you do not have to sit around and wait and wonder, will I cease to be hungry? The fact-based world has no such certainty. The only thing that you can say, the only thing, is that facts will produce more facts. You might consider two or three little sidebars. Maybe we'll get stuck on them, or maybe we won't. But having to do with that, you could also note this, that in the overall question of future, it's also that facts cannot predict acts in the manner that facts can foreshadow other facts. I knew I shouldn't have said that. Well, at first, the first part of the sentence I drug out, that facts cannot produce acts. At first, an ordinary intelligence might say, well, that's ridiculous, because that would have to be, and they could turn on me if they'd been listening for the last few nights, and say, wait a minute, that's part of fact's job, the intellect's job. That is part of what science, that is part of what technology is to be able to predict things. To be able to predict that a law or a theorem may work in a certain way and then even verify it, or to predict that if we build a piece of equipment that operates in a certain way, it will take a rocket to the moon. It will make an automobile engine run more efficiently. I mean, just almost impossible to say anything about that, isn't it? Ha! Well, except for this to start with, that some of you already saw a few nights ago, and now don't forget you already saw it, that facts follow acts. Facts do not spring forward. So how can a fact produce or predict an act? How can you find a child and a child say, all right, I'm going to tell you tomorrow who my father will be? Not that the child will tell you tomorrow. The child will tell you now that in the future I'll tell you who my father is. That is, I don't have a father. It would be like taking, what was the name, Heidelberg theory about subatomic particles, and probably throwing it to the ground, putting knockwurst in the midst of it, and then chopping it up and some way whirling it around your waist like a hula hoop. You could not go backwards. Regardless of the old blues songs, a child does not give birth to his father. And so for facts to be able to produce acts, you would have the situation in reverse. And yet everything at the intellect, if you didn't get too distracted, would tell you that that's not true, that part of the job is to predict. Yeah? Other than the fact that it can't. Well, it certainly seems so at times. I'm quite aware. I just went through some of that. How else can we send on some sort of fairly regular basis, notwithstanding that NASA seems to be run by more and more cartoonists from Disney World, how else could we safely, in any manner, predict, try and send, for instance, a rocket just even into orbit? Were it not for, see, I'm taking life's part now, city people's part, were it not for the ability for facts to predict acts, then how would you ever go about that? They would just have to be out there in some kind of random way instead of, we'd have to get all of those 10,000 monkeys, chimpanzees, that over there have been working all these hundreds of years with the typewriters trying to accidentally finally write the complete sonnets and works of Shakespeare. You remember those guys? They're still at it. You'd have to say, turn them loose from that for a little bit and bring them over and just throw down all the equipment you get your hands on, just all kinds of electronics, and just see that finally, wouldn't they accidentally put together something that resembled a rocket, then accidentally put together something that was some kind of guidance system, then accidentally set it off, and then it'd accidentally go into orbit. So you'd say that's ridiculous. Now you can forget the chimpanzees. You would say that an ordinary intellectual man, much less civilized society and technology, would not just suddenly grab an abandoned 57 Dodge, put some kind of wings on it, try and put in some, instead of unleaded regular, put in some racing fuel and set it up on the end of its trunk and light it and hope it'd go up. You say that's ridiculous. They have sat down and they have, for all intents and purposes, they have almost eliminated, they have taken the risk factor down to maybe less than 1%. In other words, it's 99% certainty that the thing will fly and do what it says it was going to do. There is your proof that facts can produce acts. And there's no way out. I can shake my head forever, I guess. But any intelligent, reasonable person would say there's no way around that. Facts cannot predict acts in the same way in which they can foreshadow other facts. They cannot even predict acts, but I was going to try and give you some way to worm out of it, in as much as we weren't planning to even stop here with that. Facts cannot predict acts. They would have to produce acts. Facts continue to produce more facts. May I leave and let some of you then ponder, maybe just hit it on your own, that, wait a minute, sending a rocket to the moon is actually a fact. It's not an act. That's just a general hint. How about prediction? The whole area, just another little side step. The whole idea of there being the ability to predict, or even the question, the possibility of prediction regarding acts or facts. Consider it this way. that acts just are, as far as time, then, now, and always, while facts come and go, and then come and go some more. Then they come, and then they go, and then they come, they go some more. And there is no such coming and going with acts. They literally simply are. Even in a three-dimensional sense, once you get a glimpse of it, they do not subject themselves very readily for any kind of temporal observation or discussion. What is the difference between sex, eating food 5,000 years ago, and now? And I assume all of you are hip enough to know that they did not invent the doggy position in the 1800s. Acts simply are. They were, they are, and as far as the three-dimensional mind can see, they will be. Which is what I was saying. No one sits around, no sane person is now engaged in discussions. No sane person has a sane grant from a sane institution or a sane foundation letting him go off and try and ponder the future of eating. At the level at which things operate at best now, the future of facts, in any temporal sense, is not even in question. Nobody even thinks to analyze it. They simply are, and they are in the sense, if you want to cut up that good old horizontal line of apparent time of the past and the present and the future, they are. Well, how can you say that there is any sort of future? If there is a future, if there is this kind of line, which does seem to run through ordinary polarized mentation, that there is a past and there is some kind of present and there is obviously a future coming, if that be true, then the future of acts is the same thing as its past. So to talk about some kind of prediction about the acts at the basic level of humanity, it's just a hobby. It has no validity, because there it is. And if you can see anything, you can see that acts in that sense they're not subject to factual prediction. If there is going to be something changed in the life of man, which someday, if he lives long enough, obviously, trust me. No, don't. It may change. How about that? They'll let everybody go with it. It may. Sex may get different. Eating may get different. Sleeping, non-sleeping may get different. Okay? But let me tell you this. The fact-based, secondary thinking mind of man right now got no idea what it is. None. That's part of the hobby. That's part of literature, fiction, weather prediction, economic forecasting, financial advisements. It's part of the hobby. Or it's part of a man saying, yes, there's no doubt about it, Monday, I will quit drinking, get off my ass, and I'll start running. First thing Monday. Honey, don't forget, no more pizza. It's that kind of prediction. As long as we're really sidetracked, how about one more that came out tonight? That if man had to wait for proof, there would be no facts. While the mere existence of acts are their verification. I guess we all triply wish I hadn't stopped. That, again, may I suggest, for ordinary intelligence, is so refutable that probably ordinary sane people would not even stoop low enough to bother to refute it. To say if we had to wait for proof, there'd be no facts. Because what is the ordinary response from your own nervous system? You being as intelligent, and epidemic, exemplary as anyone else, is you would say, well, what are facts other than things that have been proved? That it's been proved that if you plot a trajectory using certain aspects of trigonometry calculus, that we will send this rocket into that orbit. That's already been proven. We proved it theoretically on paper. We have now even proved it during, I guess, three-dimensional sampling We have even done it. It's been done last year. The fact that we're going to use to put this thing in orbit has been proven. What else is a fact? Think about it. If there were such things, if facts were actually based on proof, there would be no new facts. Now, if you were really, really ordinary, and I'll speak for you, you could say, well, now, yeah, there could be, because we keep going into other areas. No. It's still the same old areas, but what was a fact? In other words, what was true in all sorts of ways, psychologically, sociologically, but especially, take the obvious one, scientifically. Things that were true 500 years ago, 2,000 years ago are now laughable. I have not heard Aristotle suggested for any Nobel Prize posthumously in any field of science. It's ridiculous. What was true 50 years ago is no longer true. What the human mind thinks of is proof, even what it says in a dictionary, insofar as it being conclusive, certain, precise, is not so. It's not supposed to be so. But on top of that, it's not supposed to be seen to not be so. Or else what would the fact-based mind have to lean on? It would go, if you can't depend on facts, what can you depend on? Now you can depend on acts, but another Kairut tonight, that he was suggesting that from a certain kind of very subversive view, life is actually perhaps too simple and straightforward. And so life had to get men talking about it to complex it up. That's one whole term. And once you start talking about it, then it seems to become more challenging, more complex, of course, captious, even threatening. But anyway, a whole scenario. Just pick out all of the kinds of, looking at the thesaurus, under the word, any emotional word. Favorable, exciting, and just go down the list, and that's all the things that now life is. But what if it were not for facts, and it were true that life, at one level, from a certain view, was far too simple and direct? Then would you see why it could be said that that if we waited for proof, there would be no facts, because facts, in that sense, are not proof-based. That is not the point. And yet simultaneously, the ordinary intellect says that they are inseparable, that there in fact are no facts, unless I'm using it in such a metaphorical way that I've almost strangled it out of, or pulled it out of recognizable form, which I'm not going to bother to answer that. But if you had to wait for proof, if it had to be certain that right here we have finally, I know that we've played around, and I know that many, many people have been very disturbed about the continuing debate over exactly what constitutes the extreme limits of what we have been calling of late the electromagnetic force. So we want everybody to calm down. Maybe they'd get the president to go on TV and say, all right, here it is, so that you people have got one less thing to worry about. It's not going to happen. Now, if it happened, they would come take the president or whoever put him up to it, and they would pat him on the back and say, now calm down, we're going out for a little ride. They attempt to do the same thing. They can get by with it because of the way life's arranged, and I say get by because it's arranged to serve another purpose, but they do it in areas that do not seem to be so act-based. Of course, they'd call it fact-based, but so act-based, such as religion. Because in religion, all you've got to do, not even have any credentials. That's probably a hindrance. You simply stand up and say, the God spoke to me, and the God said that there is no such thing as gravity. So, forget that. And it's probably those who believe in gravity are the same ones that refuse to send money into this TV ministry. You are, knowingly or otherwise, serving nefarious, devilish purposes. Forget it. There is no such thing as gravity. That's why they can't prove it. And that's why the Bible, or whatever it is they point to, is correct. If it was dependent, absolutely, on proof, not just us using that word in a strange way. And I could get some ordinary people, listen right quick in your own intellect, I could get some ordinary people for a split second to go, yeah, that's true. If it was dependent upon proof, there would be no facts. Now, of course, an ordinary intellect might go, well, all right. But it would have to immediately step off of that dime, because you could not even discuss the factual world, the secondary world continuing, if it were on the basis that it has to be real proof. And they wouldn't know why. And it's not a psychological trick. It is the fact that energy is flowing in a certain way, and if a whole lot of people heard that and started reacting to the energetic background to the words, that is, that wait a minute, every fact that we know all the way from religion to hard science, none of it's based on proof, then you would have a very large traffic jam on the neural network on planet Earth. Everyone would go into vapor lock up here, because it is a closer statement of the functional reality that there are no proofs for facts. The closest thing that is a proof of any kind on this planet are acts. But their mere existence is their proof. Their verification is. Does somebody have to prove sex? Is eating based on, wait a minute. Now, I know there's some interesting theories regarding eating, but I want to see some hard statistical facts. I want some evidence before I eat. You're not going to make a fool out of me. The mere existence of an act, or if you want to look at it another way, how about this? It seems that too many of you either think you're missing it or you're still sleeping off Sunday. If it were otherwise, instead of talking about acts, look at facts. Are there any facts that do not require some additional facts? Are there any facts that do not require some comment? Are there any facts that do not require, and I mean now in the broadest sense, some justification, that is some evidence, even if it's just anecdotal? Can you state some fact like, I'm a hell of a guy? Just for instance. Nobody can do that. They could be one of the most hell of a guys on the planet. But to say I'm a hell of a guy, to say I am the greatest writer since Balzac. Now, it requires, you do understand, assuming again that the man is not so, that he is not a true, living, systemic, transient anomaly in the nervous system of life, so as to just be dismissed, he was just a burp. If for some reason he was going to play some visible role over some period of time, and he said that, or you go try it instead of us talking about he, if you say that, and let's say that you had some kind of audience, the people listened, they entertained it for a second, you came out and said, I'm glad you all showed up. I'm here to tell you, I'm here to make the revelation, state the fact, as it were. I am the greatest writer, at least in the Indo-European language base, root base, since Balzac. And the crowd, let's say they like you, that you gave them free beer and pretzels before it started, and they had heard about you before, and they show up, and let's say that they're favorably inclined up to a point. But you cannot say that and stop. But now, do you think that that was getting into too murky an area, such as, well, matters of taste and etc.? Nay, nay. Bring out Dr. So-and-so with real credentials. He comes out and he says, I have spent now on to 40 years of my life in that lab. And I'm here to tell you, I know it's going to come as a shock, I'm here to tell you there is no such thing as gravity. Now, that's pretty far removed than some guy wandering off the street and saying, listen, I'm God. I wrote Shakespeare. Quit worrying about Bacon and all those other non-kosher guys. I wrote all the works of Shakespeare. If that seems too vague, go into it being an absolute statement of something that would seem to be scientific. Or a man come out, the man who won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago in mathematics, he comes out and he says, I think it's going to be the crowning masterpiece of what heretofore has been an otherwise already distinguished career, if I may say so. I have discovered there is no such number as 7. Let's say that they're listening, that the man is a little eccentric. Some of his jackets only have a patch on one sleeve. But the man, think about in the past, he ran he ran some two or three less than 3-minute intellectual miles, so give the man a hearing. But if that's all he says, you can't give him a hearing. As ridiculous as it sounds, but it was basic. I was trying to get your attention on something that had the initial appearance of being fact-based, science. The man says there is no such thing as gravity. Something must be said. Acts, well, I was trying to get you, in case you lost your place, to see that there is a specific difference, not just me making up these verbal maps. If it's not an act, then proof apparently is required, but no proof is possible. Is the way I started, if you recall, Kyrut and I, that if you wait for proof, you wouldn't even have any facts. So I take what I just said, then if you think, well, that can't be true because I even took the ordinary position and proved, well, it's got to be true. Or else we could not predict, forget rockets and all that, I wasn't trying to get too complicated. You could not even predict that you could plug in a fan in the wall and turn it on and the fan worked. It's got a little relay in there and they're producing through the known laws of physics and they're producing through their own dynamos, they're putting in AC current here, and that we're predicting that this will work, that the fan will turn on. Look at it, what I was trying to get you to do is look at it from another direction. Anything that is not act-based requires, just don't get hung up on the word proof, it requires some further comment. You cannot say electrical fans are an illusion. There is no such number as 7. I got a personal postcard. Buddha wrote me personally yesterday. Anything that is not act-based cannot be proven. But it requires the appearance of proof. And at city level, that's all that's required. Because if it actually required proof, we wouldn't have any facts. Now, so yeah, I knew I'd wrap it up if I got all of you little cow hands running around circles and get dizzy enough and trying to get the wagon trains all in a circle and then disperse them, then bring them back and then get you going around and around. That finally every now and then people go, wow, I almost see it. And of course some of you think you've been spun around too often that you might get a little queasy. Well, all right. Let me push on a little bit more. When it comes to ordinary thinking, into the intellectual process itself, consider it this way, that intellectual, ordinary thinking has no individual future within one man. And it is the illusion that it does that is the feeling that I can run another 2-minute intellectual mile. I can do it again. I can shave a few seconds off. It is the illusion that thoughts, facts have a possible future within one man that keeps men neurally churned up. Keeps them doing a little this, like I'll get back in shape. I will do it. Facts do have a future. Not just vaguely. Facts, intelligence, thought has a future in me. And notice, we spent all this time, and all of you proved it to my satisfaction, that in that sense, facts have no future. Not in one man's lifetime. But if it were not for the distinct energy running through the human nervous system, then no one would try to think. That they would have some crude awareness, as we mentioned before, that they either had the opportunity or did already reach the zenith of their intellectual prowess, that they ran sometime, back when they were 20, 21, sometime, that they ran their own 2-minute mile, and that's it. But you cannot believe that. You cannot accept. You have got to take. You can't teach an old dog new tricks as a specious proverb. Yeah. or at least a proverb that only has to do with people less astute, dedicated, committed than you are. Or else you would not even dream of, that is, fact-based activity, even dream that, yeah, I can get back in shape. I can do it again. My legs are not completely gone. Some of my best thoughts are ahead of me. Honey, don't buy any cheap kind of reading material next week, because after starting Monday, starting first thing, yeah, I'm getting back to that kind of Spartan, lean, mean thinking machine that I know I can be. There is a few more aspects of this that perhaps won't seem quite as strange. It is only creatures privy to facts. I guess you understand, won't come as a surprise, I was referring to men. But it's only creatures that are privy to facts who attempt to produce finished products. The world of acts, what ordinary people would call nature, then you give it a shot. Nature never does that. Now, I'm just using nature in the way everybody else uses it so that you don't think that I got too strange. But that, in relationship to the kind of method that we're doing of acts and facts, you understand what everybody else calls nature, the natural world, that which would be unsoiled had not man put his grainy little hands on it. Nature. Nature does not even attempt that. It doesn't fool with it. There's nothing that you can see in nature, if you got any kind of eyesight at all, that would tell you that there is a comparable thrust in nature. It's only creatures that are privy to facts that attempt to turn out finished products. Not a mistake. They got to. But notice, I repeat one more time before I go, notice, nature, what ordinary people in the city, even intellectual people will go to a baseball game. Intellectual people will in some way, under duress, will admit that there is some kind of singular wisdom to nature itself. We cannot ignore nature, and in most cases, the more, in the ordinary sense, intellectual and educated people are, the more they will even grant nature some superior, transcendental, if not spiritual, but just some kind of basic, silent wisdom. No, for instance, even these intellectual scientists, it is nature itself, nature herself, who operates and makes the laws of physics. And it's only us poor mortals who try and discover it and get a grant. But notice, they can't see any connection to this, that if you are driven by the fact-based world, that you are a creature privy to facts, you have no choice. You can't even analyze it. I'm fixing to analyze it for you and show you that it would be ridiculous if they tried to in the city. They wouldn't even listen to it. But creatures privy to facts are driven continually, not just spasmodically, is the continual, unanalyzed, unnoticed drive to produce finished products. To wit, silly as hell, but here it is. Would scientists get together with the government, fund NASA, and decide, all right, we're going to build this rocket, and they plan it all, and the first time to go to the moon, and the general attitude is that it probably won't make it to the moon, but hell, let's see how far it goes. And they ask for volunteers, and the guy goes, yeah, I don't care. I don't mind if we go to the moon, but hell if we don't make it. In Congress, those overseeing the funds has got to run for re-election. They go, well, if we understand you correctly, you figure that, well, right now, if we tried to send it off next month like you were talking about, right in time for the election, you figure that it's not as good as you could do it if we waited a few more years, and all of a sudden say, yeah, we could do a lot better. They go, well, and so it probably, there's no real chance it might make it. Nah, the astronauts know that. No, guys, yeah, we won't. You understand? It's ridiculous. Right? Yet, outside the fact-based world, the secondary world of man, nature attempts nothing. There is nothing you can observe that would tell you that nature operates on the same basis. What ordinary people call nature, remember, I'm not putting any personal spin on it. And yet it makes what they'd call nature, makes men, the creatures privy to facts, operate on the basis that anything worthwhile, they don't even analyze it. I repeat, I assume you see the folly of me pointing it out now. They don't even think about, well, should we attempt to do something when we know it won't get completed? It's on the basis that the only thing worthwhile, the only reason to pursue this line, the only reason to try and come out with a new, improved version of our underarm deodorant this year is to finally, by God, get it right, notwithstanding the acceptable legal area of advertising puffery. Why would anybody get up tomorrow and do research, try to improve their job, when there'd be suggestion boxes out there in the workplace or in your own brain? It is that the whole march of civilization, the whole development of humanity, the perfection of the thinking process is driven by the unanalyzed, unnoted, unquestioned attempt to produce a finished product. It's not the man to say, well, I'm going to come up, I would like to be famous. Here's what I'll do. I'll write the world's greatest unfinished symphony. That's assuming the guy never heard of Schubert. I'll come up with a theory. Well, I'll come up with most of the theory that will finally, it will be mostly that unified theory they're looking about to explain everything. That's what I'll do. I'll work on that, and I'll come up with a good part of it. Boy, hey, I'll get somewhere. You know that's not true. If you weaseled your way up on the platform at some reading somewhere, the Sheboygan Institute or annual meeting of physicists, and you show up and you say, everybody's interested in the idea still of a unified, what do they call it, the theory to explain it all, the TEA or whatever, and they all decide to go, yeah, like, who is this guy? And he says, well, I'm here to tell you, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've been working on it during my off hours out there on the dairy farm. And believe it or not, I know a lot of you have never heard of me here, but let me tell you what, I've got a theory. It's not a complete one, but the part I got makes sense. It doesn't, of course, explain. It doesn't take all the other, you guys keep saying there are 4 basic forces. All right, it takes all, in my opinion, 1.5 or 2 of them, and got them together. You understand the man is not going to get a hero's welcome. Nobody attempts to produce an unfinished product. They do not do it, obviously, physically. Nobody puts out a fan. Or nobody puts out an icebox that'll run every other day. Nobody puts out a stove that might cook only Italian recipes. Nobody's going to put out a car that will run 5 feet and then stop. I was going to ask myself, when's the last time you bought a General Motors? Well, as always, it is the beauty of the way life is arranged in the nervous system of man that men, without any thinking, is what I was, surely you see it, that people would laugh if I went to the trouble to say, well, wait, when we're into the area of facts, you understand what I'm saying? They go, all right, we follow it. Then men operate on the basis that the only worthwhile attempt, the only thing they're doing is to try a finished product. They go, well, are you waiting for some kind of phony baloney medal for stating the obvious? Certainly. But it's the same way as saying, well, facts. Facts are, in fact, things are proven. There's evidence for them. When I'm saying you, and you should be able to see, there's not. So in the same way of saying, well, the whole thing of driving the factual world of man, the civilized, thinking segment of humanity, which now includes darn near everyone, except a few men that work in used car, well, that it is on the basis that the only thing worthwhile is to put out a finished product. They could say to me, using your own examples, it would be ridiculous, an understatement, for people to undertake some kind of project, whether it be in technology, science, the arts, and not finish it. But nothing is ever finished. And no one notices it. Because from an ordinary street level view, you can say, well, it is finished. This is the best we can do. It works now. But it's at the end of it. Now, at one time, they looked around and whatever they called it, a full school, the, I guess, realism, the Flemish, the Rembrandt. We call it the Rembrandt era. And if everybody who had any taste then the mavens, the recognized critics of art at that time, they all sat down, sweated bullets, debated, arm wrestled, and decided this is it. This is the height of the human creative spirit as reflected in the plastic art of painting. Let's assume that's true. The man, just my opinion, I agree, the man could paint. Was that the end of it? People said Newton. People made up little rhymes about, God said, let there be heaven, let there be earth, and finally said, let there be Newton, and that was the end of it. Nowadays, if Newton had not progressed, we hadn't seen him in a long time, but if the man hadn't kept up, and we dug him up now and he came back, you do know he couldn't get a job teaching physics in high school. There is no such thing in the world of man, in the fact-based world of man, as a finished product. The closest thing to a finished product, I'll have to go ahead and tell you again, is a corpse, literally and figuratively. If it is a finished product, what it is a dead end. That is, that life no longer is sending energy down that particular tributary, down that vein, down into that substrata of energy. It just ran to the point that life, for whatever reason, didn't need to go any further. There is no such thing outside what is the fact-based world of man. There is no such thing as even the attempt to produce a finished product. And yet man will say, that is our attempt. We do operate on that basis, and at that level you can't naysay it. If they say we do produce finished product, that's the only reason technology works. That's true. Except it's not proven, and it's not a finished product. Yeah, but you're giving me a headache, Mother. But it's a free headache.